The following module talks about the life tables first prepared by the United Nations in the year 1955 and briefly also touches upon the United Nations model life tables for developing countries prepared in 1982, which is discussed more in detail in another module. The original United Nations model life tables were based on mortality patterns observed in countries, which were useful in providing estimates regarding the overall mortality conditions in countries, particularly where vital registration is incomplete or of lesser quality. Life tables can also be used in order to leverage partial information, as for example, estimating an entire life table based on a single estimate of infant mortality. For the construction of these life tables, accurate age-specific mortality rates are required, often which are derived as data may be inadequate or insufficient. The United Nations tables of year 1955 have 158 tables based on observed mortality data from countries in the period 1900s to 1950, constructed according to different criteria. However, they had some limitations, due to which subsequently other life tables were developed. One of the main limitations was that the basic data on model life tables were mostly gathered from the experience of European countries, which did not represent the mortality conditions of developing countries adequately. Due to some of these shortcomings, the United Nations developed life tables in 1982 in order to overcome some of the limitations of the previous modules, constructing 72 life tables corresponding to 22 populations, which came to represent 4 main types of mortality patterns. These new United Nations model life tables will be discussed in another module in this paper.
I am Dr. C.P. Prakasham, retired professor from International Institute for Population Sciences, Mumbai. I will be telling about United Nations Model Life Table, Module 29. Learning objective: to learn about model life tables prepared by the United Nations UN in 1955, concepts and the need of model life tables, about UN Model Life Table in 1955, comments on UN Model Life Tables, new UN Model Life Tables for developing countries. Model life tables are life tables that are usually based on observed data in actual countries. The first models were developed by United Nations in the 1950s. Model life tables are very useful in providing estimates of overall mortality conditions in countries for which vital registration is incomplete or of less quality. They are also often used to leverage partial information. For example, one can estimate an entire life table based on single estimates of infant mortality. As a pattern of mortality by age and sex is different in different countries and different time period, the need for developing model life tables emerged. 4 different systems of model life tables have been developed after critically examining a large number of life tables in the world. United Nations Model Life Tables 1955, Cole and Demeny Regional Model Life Tables, Bros-Logit Life Table System, new UN Model Life Tables for developing country. UN Model Life Table 1955 are based on 158 observed life tables referring to the period 1900 to 1950. The selected 158 life tables are based on the following criteria: widest coverage of geographic area and an adequate spacing in time, exclusion of countries' data for the period that has affected by war, famine, floods, influenza epidemics, etc. Uniform scale of age interval. Construction of model life table. The value of phi qx, that probability of dying between ages x and x plus 5 in a life table, is a quadratic function with the previous age group except with q0 and q1. The form of quadratic equation relating each phi qx values to its previous value, that is phi qx minus 5, was as follows: phi qx equals to ax plus bx multiplied by phi qx minus 5 plus cx multiplied by phi qx minus 5 whole square. Construction of model life table. The coefficient ax, bx, cx values will be estimated by using regression method. The phi qx values corresponding to any phi qx minus 5 values can be computed through the different second degree chain relationship parabolic regression equation between the life table annual death rate phi qx and pairs of adjacent age groups. After obtaining model life tables for both sexes combined, the sex-wise life tables were obtained by utilizing the observed correlation between the given level of mortality and sex difference in the qx values pertaining to each age group. Limitation of United Nations model life tables. The basic data on which the model life tables were developed are mostly gathered from European countries' mortality experience, which are not representing developing countries' mortality conditions. Limitations of UN model life table. The methodology used in quadratic equation relating to one parameter to the next are not exact. The regression method in this context used quadratic function assumes that the distribution of error in the regression model is known and that their means is 0. Limitations of United Nations model life table. Further, in the chinning approach, together with regression method, the errors in estimated would only contribute to the extensiated errors in the next. Limitation of UN model life table. Given set of model life tables provided a single average parameter of mortality at different levels of mortality determined by the infant mortality rate Q0. The sex-wise model life tables have been obtained from both sexes combined tables by using model diagram of sex differentials in mortality by age. Theoretically, it requires to fit regression equations separately for each sex. Limitation of model life table. All model life table systems are generated from analysis of a large collection of historical mortality. Unlike mathematical models such as Gompertz 1825 or the all-age models advanced by Hilligam and Polarad 1980 that depicts the shape of human mortality with relatively few parameters, other empirical models like the Cole and Deminy 1966 model life tables, new UN model life tables for developing countries 1982, model by Wilmoth and colleagues 2009, relational models like Brass 1971, Murray et al. 2003 are constructed to represent both developed and developing countries and to a larger extent depicts true mortality situation with slight variations. For construction of life table, accurate age-specific mortality is required. Due to inadequate and insufficient data on mortality by age, it became necessary to develop mathematical function to derive ASMR. An attempt was made by Hilgam and Polared 1980 on age pattern of mortality through 8 parameters model, found to be a successful attempt to construct life in the depicting the shape of mortality from the past. United Nations Model Life Table 1995. The first set of model life tables by United Nations developed by Population Division of United Nations Secretariat 1995. The United Nations analyzed mortality data collected from less developed area, constructing 72 tables, 32 each for male and female, corresponding to 22 populations in 1982. The effort was in part to overcome the limitations of the earlier models, particularly with regards to data from less developed area. Two statistical procedures were used to divide the life tables into many groups as per the age pattern of mortality revealed in the data. Accordingly, the first group individuals, countries, population with high level of infant child mortality, young adult mortality, and at older ages mortality on the lower side. These countries includes Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, Guatemala, Honduras, Thailand, Costa Rica, and El Salvador. The second group comprises only of the population of Chile, as the mortality pattern were more similar to group 4 except for very high infant mortality. The third group comprises of countries such as India, Tunisia, Iran, and the Matlab area of Bangladesh, with mortality patterns that have higher death rate among the under age 15 and those of very old ages, and lower mortality for middle age groups. The fourth group, the countries with male population such as Guyana, Singapore, Trinidad and Tobago, Hong Kong, the Republic of Korea, and the female population of countries as Singapore, Guinea and Trinidad and Tobago, characterized by very high death rate and old age compared to death rates at younger ages. On the basis of data collected from the populations in these four groups, the life tables were constructed in terms of 4 mortality models based on predominant regions pattern. They were identified geographically as Latin America, Chilean, South Asia, and Far East pattern. Patterns of mortality other populations could not be categorized under these groups easily, which was grouped together under the 5th mortality models called the general pattern. These have been drawn out through comparison with the Cole-Deminy West region model life table. It was an important and a large understanding of the study of mortality pattern in less developed country, which influenced both the study of mortality and the construction of model life tables.